Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel once before. So the last beer that I tried from these guys was very nice. These guys are a very new addition to the Scottish beer scene and their beers have been getting very good write-ups, and based on the last one that we had, I can definitely see why. It was a really interesting one to try, in fact. So the one that we're going to try today is supposed to be a little bit more complex. It's also a little bit bigger, so hopefully this is another good one from them. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it. I'm looking forward to it. So for this review then, we are going to head through to Glasgow once again, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Epochal Brewery, or Epochal Barrel Fermented Ales, to give them their full name. So this particular beer is called the Ethereal Substances. It comes in at 6.8% ABV, and this one is another barrel-aged pale ale. So yeah, I think this could be very, very interesting. So let me just place this down. But the last beer that we had from these guys was the Ad Infinitum, which I did enjoy actually. That was a beer that really got me thinking about how things came out on the palate and stuff like that. So I am hoping that this one does the same actually. And there are a few others that I'm hoping to get a hold of from these guys over the next little while. So keep your eyes peeled for a few more reviews from this brewery actually. So yeah, let's crack on with it then and see how we go. Nice to return to Epochal after a couple of weeks. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Epochal Brewery before, and we will, as I say, add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I am enjoying a little bit of time at home in the motherland. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Epochal Brewery then, on to my brewery notes once again. So, Epochal Brewery, as I've told you before, are based in the Port Dundas area of Glasgow, and the company was founded in early 2021 by Gareth Young. So, he's an academic philosopher. He specialises in the philosophy and logic of mathematics at Glasgow University. He's been quite a long time academic from what I understand. But he homebrewed for a long time as well, and he was active in a few groups including Milk the Funk, and he actually won the UK National Homebrewing Awards back in 2015, having been runner-up the year before. So he was a very well thought of homebrewer, and that's the story with a good number of these guys who start up their own breweries. But his brewing interest really just kind of developed to the point where he wanted to go for it, turn professional, and found his own company. So here we are. So the brewery is located in a small industrial unit. They run a 10 hectolitre brew kit, and they're hoping to have a tap room at the brewery for summer of 2022, and hopefully we can go and visit that actually next year. But a small amount of the beer has been exported, but only, very, very small amounts, I would hasten to add. But the exports will remain particularly small over the next little while as they continue to grow. I think the whole idea is basically to grow their sales here in Scotland and then throughout the British Isles, I guess we could say as well. But the story of using the name Epochal is kind of an interesting one, so I'm going to directly quote Gareth here on this one. So it says here, initially it came from a story about the actor Klaus Kinski, who became furious with a critic who called a performance of his outstanding and extraordinary. He angrily corrected that it was monumental and epochal. So he and his friends, or me and my friends, used to go around calling things epochal as a tongue-in-cheek, over-the-top term of praise. But however, it also felt like it fitted with my plans for the brewery in another sense. For something to be epochal is for it to define a period of time, also known as an epoch. But the beer styles I was interested in exploring at the brewery were styles like pale ale, porter, and so on. These beer styles in their wood-aged funky form define large periods of brewing history, and so are epochal in this sense. So my ambition is to combine inspirations from the various epochs of brewing, including the current one, and give a further sense of fit for me with with the name Epochal. So yeah, that was a direct quote. I think I messed it up a little bit though, from Gareth himself. But yeah, as of November 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 7 different kinds of beer, and I don't know, maybe we will be able to review all of them over the Christmas period. We'll just need to see if I can get a hold of all of them actually. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Epochal Brewery, or Epochal Barrel Fermented Ales, to give them their full name at this point. If you want to learn a little bit more, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. And a big thank you as well to Gareth for replying to my original email that I sent and giving me that information that I've just told you about the brewery. So yeah, these guys are very new, so it would be quite difficult to get that sort of information about them. But yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at this beer. That is your history section. So, as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty similar to what we've had from Epochal before. Pretty much all the artwork on these beers is the same, bar the colour, of course. But yeah, it should be pretty nice, this one. And interestingly, it says best before the 6th of June 2026. So I'm guessing this one, I'm thinking that'll be a 5-year period they'll have put on that. That would make sense. So yeah, I'm drinking this one when it's, I guess, about 5 months old or something like that. So yeah, you can get more of these and just age them a little bit. But there you can see just a plain silver bottle cap on this one. But yeah, that's what we had last time as well. So yeah, this is a 375, yeah, 375 milliliter bottle, and I think I want to say I paid about £6 for this, and I bought this one at Ellie's Cellar along in dollars. So £6 is going to be roughly about €7, something like that. 70 Swedish kroner for those of you watching over there, and I guess somewhere in the region of like $8 American. So yeah, not bad for when you consider what this beer actually is, a barrel-aged one. But yeah, 6.8% ABV. This one is hopped with Huell Melon and Centennial. Huell Melon, of course, is a German hop. It comes in with about, if I remember rightly, about 8% alpha acid, and it gives you some nice big melony flavours, hence the name. But you can also get a little bit of strawberry out of it too, and it's derived from Cascade and another Huell male variety, I think it was. But Centennial we do know quite well. That's an American hop. It comes in at 12% alpha acid normally, and it gives you that big kind of zesty, lemony sort of vibe. And it's also got quite a pungent grassy character from what I remember too. But yeah, let's get this guy out. We'll get on with the tasting and see how we go. Yeah, a little bit of smoke on the opening there, as you're always going to get from these barrel fermented beers. But we'll get this guy out and into the glass. There we go. This, I think I've poured this one just a little bit aggressively, so we'll put a little bit more in, but otherwise we'll just leave it to calm for the moment, and we'll put the rest in a little bitty later on. But I tell you something, you can smell the fruit off this thing already. So yeah, it did get a little bit excited. So yeah, as you can see with this one, it's poured with a bit over a 2-finger frothy. I would say, I think that's a perfect white head on this one, but you can see the bubbles are very, very fine. Let me just get the camera to focus on that. There you go. So, as you can see, lovely looking head on this one. That is going to fade away to be a kind of thinner foamy layer the further we go on. But yeah, it's got a lovely, bright, kind of pale golden colour to it. So 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. And I don't know how well you guys can see that. Just let the camera focus on it, but there are little bits of just particulate matter floating around in this one. There is a wee bit of sedimentation in there, so yeah, all natural goodness of course, but you can see these tiny little particles just floating around in this one. But as I said, this one comes in with a nice kind of pale golden straw colour. So when it comes to the colour of your beers, it's determined by the type of malts that you use first and foremost. That goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. The length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any adjuncts that you put in or any barrel aging that you do can affect the beer as well. But I don't know with a pale ale, as long as you're, I guess it would depend on exactly what barrel you're going to use for it. And it didn't say, actually, it didn't really say what was on, what kind of barrel this went into. And I had a little look at the website as well, and there wasn't really too much on it. But yeah, it's kind of interesting in that sense. So I'd be curious to know what barrels they're using. I think maybe putting a little bit more information either on the back of the bottle or on that little bit on the front could be a good thing for Epochal to do going forward. But yeah, this one looks lovely. Nice kind of pale golden straw colour. You can see there is a little bit of a natural haze to it, but you can still see my fingers through the glass there. So more of a naturally hazy kind of thing. And as we said, a wee bit of particulate matter. But it looks a very nice beer. And this is the colour that you would expect of a paleo. As I was kind of getting on my way to saying earlier, depending on what barrel you put it in, it might be a little bit darker or a little bit lighter or whatever. But yeah, it certainly looks the part for what you would expect of a regular paleo. It hasn't varied too much, I think, due to the barrel aging. But yeah, I think that we can have a little look at the aroma of this one now then. So let's go for it. So, yeah. Oh yeah, it's quite nice, I have to say. So this is the thing that's kind of, I think I said this about the ad infinitum as well. What you'll notice about this beer straight away is that it gives you that big, grainy, farmhousey sort of thing. So I'm curious how much of that is due to the barrel aging and the wood and exactly what wood they've used in here, or whether it's due to the yeastiness. So those are the two things that will give you, and of course the malt base is going to play a role as well. If it's Scottish malt that's in here, that's also going to contribute to the sense of graininess. Scottish malt does tend to be a little bit more kind of grainy and brown bready in nature, but you get that immediately. So straight away with this beer, what I'm going to say is, overall it's quite a grainy, dry, sort of woody type beer, but you've got a nice little bit of hoppy character to it and a good little bit of fruitiness. So it's a really interesting one, and to be honest, I think that's what I like about Epochal, is that they're doing a type of beer that no other brewery really does in Scotland at the moment. So these are ones that really kind of test the palate a little bit. They're proper, I guess you could call these like properly old school beers, you know, like really old school era beers. And as I explained in the history section of the video with the name, that seems to be what he wants to do. He wants to, you know, raise people's awareness about some of these really historic beers and what beer was like back in the day. So that is pretty cool. But yeah, the aroma of this one is really pretty nice actually. Yeah, it's well balanced as well, and this is another one that is going to test my nose and my palate and things. And you know, after 3,100 and about 50 beer reviews, this is kind of what you want. So as I said, the backbone of this beer is really interesting because you can smell a little bit of that smooth kind of what I suspect is oaky wood, but at the same time there is a little bit of dryness to that wood as well. It almost gives you a wee bit of a kind of spicy character on the woody side of things too. There's definitely a little bit of a kind of Jacob's cream cracker vibe to the beer as well. So yeah, and on top of that, it's got a lot of kind of bread crusty. It's got a lot of bread crusty, kind of brown wholemeal, brown bready, grainy sort of characters as well. So I really like that when it comes to this beer as well, and I think we noticed that quite a bit in the ad infinitum as well. But this one's 6.8%, and that other one I think was only like 4 point something, if memory serves me correctly, 4.8 or something like that. So this one is quite a bit heavier than the other one. But yeah, definitely some, you know, a lot of nice kind of wholemealy brown bready character in there, a bit more of a kind of grainy bread crust, some nice crackery qualities as well, as I said, and then yeah, you've got the nice kind of smooth woodiness in there, but the woodiness really does give you quite a little bit of a kind of dryness as well. And you can smell one or two wee vanilla hints in this beer too. So I really like how that goes together with this one. The malty barrel aging side of this beer is really nice. I'm trying to figure how much of this actually comes from the yeast, because some of those woody notes and some of the more kind of grainy bready sort of things will be coming from the yeast strain that they've used in here. I'd be curious to know whether they have got their own culture, and they are kind of developing their own cultures in the lab and things like that. I mean, Gareth is an academic, he's probably got connections in the biology department at Glasgow Uni, so yeah, he'll probably have used those and during his homebrewing days to kind of figure out a lot of stuff with cultivating yeasts. So yeah, this one, on the yeasty side of things, it is pretty interesting too. I mean, it's quite a bready, doughy yeast that you get out of this one, but woody, spicy, as we said as well. It's got a little bit of an almost peppery character to it actually, which is really interesting. So the focus of this beer, of course, is on the kind of malty, yeasty side of things. That's the most forward part of the aroma and the most prominent part of the aroma for sure. But that said, at this point in its life, it's 5 months old, you are still getting a fair little bit of hoppy character out of it. And to be honest, I think we've said everything that we really need to about this beer in terms of its malty and yeasty side of things. It doesn't, you do get a teeny little bit of biscuity sweetness out of it or something like that, but not a lot, to be honest with you. So that is interesting too. But let's focus on that hoppy side of things then. So I think at the back of the nose there is definitely a wee bit of earthiness there, and that builds a good bridge between the spicy woody character and the brown bread and the spiciness of the yeast, stuff like that. As I said earlier, I'm really quite keen to know exactly where those different aromas I'm picking up are coming from. Is it more yeasty? Is it more malty? Scottish malt, the yeast strain, whatever, or the barrel aging indeed. So be curious to know exactly where those are coming from in this one. But yeah, I'm more doing an observation than analysing that too much, I guess. But yeah, a little bit of earthy hoppy notes in the back of the nose. As you come further forward, it definitely gives you a bit of a floral character, and you're also getting a lovely kind of bright grassy note out of this too. It's a little touch zesty on the grassy side of things, but that would make sense because Centennial, as I've mentioned earlier, is a very lemony leaning hop, and Huell Melon, German hops like that, regardless of what alpha acid they are, because Huell Melon is one of the more kind of higher modern alpha acid German hops. You've got Mandarina Bavaria, and you've also got it's gone right out of my head now. There's another one that's Hallertau Blanc. That's it. That's the one I was thinking of. You have got the very high alpha acid German hops like this that still give you those big, massive American, New Zealand type fruity characters, but they still have that German noble character, the bright floral and grassy notes. But you get that out of this one quite clearly. You can still smell the noble character in this one of the Huell Melon, but the floral aromaticity I think is a bit brighter because of the Centennial, and the grassiness is a little bit more zesty as well. But you smell the nice kind of smooth brightness of the German hop underneath that. So yeah, I think that describes the green component quite well, and it's still fairly pungent, as we've said. But on the fruity side of things then, this one is kind of what you'd expect, to be honest, if you know these hops. So you definitely get a bit of that kind of juicy melony note from the Huell Melon that wouldn't be called Huell Melon otherwise. You do get a little bit of the kind of candied strawberry, and I want to say there's almost a little bit of gooseberry out of this beer as well. So I think a little bit of gooseberry in there, definitely some kind of slightly sharper melons and that kind of candied strawberry sort of thing, but there's quite a bit of that lemony zesty character from the Centennial as well. Centennials, these hops are basically doing exactly as they should in my experience. But remember, this one I think is mainly dry hopped, and dry hopping is usually dry hopping is commonly used on a lot of different IPAs and pale ales and stuff like that, but that only gives you flavour and aroma. It doesn't really affect the bitterness of the beer overall. When you do late addition hops affect the bitterness a little bit, but then dry hopping is completely flavour and aroma. Early addition hops are the ones that give you a lot of the bitterness. That's more common in West Coast IPAs, of course, but yeah, it's very nice smelling, this beer, this one. So as I always say, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, but I think it is about time for us to taste this. So I'm just going to pour the rest of this carefully, just make sure there's not really any more sediment and things like that, because we do want that. Yeah, no, not too much. It's still visible on the bottom of the bottle there, but yeah, I think we are ready to have a taste of this one. So yeah, as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer, but let's get stuck into this now. So this one is the Ethereal Substances 6.8% Scottish Pale Ale, barrel aged with Huell Melon and Centennial from Epochal Brewery, or Epochal Barrel Fermented Ales in Port Dundas through in Glasgow. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Let's go for it. Yeah, that is pretty nice actually. As I've said, as I said in the ad infinitum, probably the closest thing you're going to get to these beers are some of the sort of old school Belgian saisons and stuff like this. That's probably the closest thing to what you're getting from from Epochal, but they are definitely, they really do have that Scottish touch to them. They've got that big, grainy, brown bready sort of thing that you expect of Scottish malts. So they are almost a little bit like Scottish farmhouse beers in some ways. I've seen that recently they've released a porter as well, so I will need to get a hold of that and review that for you as a different style, because I think all the other ones are slightly different paleos and things. But yeah, that's something that we will need to look at, actually, is getting the other beers of these, because I don't know how often they do the batches and stuff like this. But yeah, this one, it is like a kind of Scottish saison in some ways, like a barley aged saison. It's a lovely beer. Once again, I'm going to say that straight away. What Epochal are doing is both really interesting and just really nice, actually. So yeah, if you haven't had some of these old school Belgian saisons or French bière de gars and stuff like this, it is something that will take a little bit of time. It is a bit of an acquired taste, but definitely stick with it. Definitely stick with it and have a go at some of these. These are very nice. I have to say, I do like the slightly higher alcohol content in this one. I think it gives the beer a wee bit more. It makes the beer just a little bit bigger and gives it a wee bit more depth, actually, compared to the Ad Infinitum. But that's not to knock that beer in any way. That was a nice beer. But I think having the slightly higher alcohol just suits this style of beer a little bit more, to be honest with you. Yeah, but let's break this down and describe it for you. It's one of these beers that actually sticks quite well in its flavour profile to what you get in the aroma, but things just come out at slightly different pungencies. So straight away with this beer, the focus is on that barrel aging, malty, yeasty side of the beer. You would absolutely expect that from this. So straight away across the middle and back third of your palate, you can feel that base layer of nice smooth oak in there. And you've got a bit between the front of the middle third of your palate and the very back of the back third of your palate. There is a little bit of a spectrum there. Now remember, on your palate, it tends to be that the sweeter flavours come out further forward and the more bitter, kind of grainy type flavours come out towards the back of your palate. So let's focus on the middle third of your palate for the moment. So for me, this one, on the middle third of your palate, at the back of that, you can feel you've got a little bit of the kind of drier side of the oaky sort of things, but as you come further forward, you can feel that it gets gradually smoother and sweeter, and then you get a bit of vanilla out of it. You absolutely get the vanilla in this one, particularly on the aftertaste, and I do think that this beer on the front of the palate, the front half of the palate, it gets sweeter the further you go into the aftertaste, but at the back of the palate, on the back half, it really gets a little bit more kind of bitter and grainy. So it's really interesting from that perspective, actually. But yeah, on top of that kind of woody layer that we have, I think there's a little bit of a sort of Jacob's cream cracker type thing. There's definitely a bit of that. Then on top of that, you've got a kind of mix of bread crust, like a sort of wholemeal bread crust, or maybe even like a rye bread crust. It's maybe that grainy that you could describe it as being like a rye bread crust. And then on top of that, you've got some nice smooth kind of wholemeal type vibes to the beer as well. Some nice wholemeal brown bready characters too. So yeah. So yeah, I think that the brown bready character in this one, again, I think it's a wee bit, I think it is quite, as we would say, you've got that lovely, it gets a bit more grainy on the back half of that front third of your palate, but then as you come further forward, it smoothens out a little bit and it becomes almost a slightly sweeter brown bready character. And again, I really like how this goes together. I do think in the middle of your palate, right in the dead centre, you've got a little circle there in the middle of this beer, and you do get a little bit of a kind of, I hesitate to say full-on caramel, but maybe in the dead centre of your palate is where the alcohol flavours are really concentrated. You do get a bit of a straight-up sweet caramel, but as you move further out from that, you do get more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, but it's a little bit of it's like a darker graininess that you get from the McVitie's digestive flavour, if that makes sense. But yeah, when it's 6.8%, that's kind of to be expected. The usually in these beers, the sort of brown sugary notes you get are the things that are covering up the alcohol, or they are the alcohol flavours themselves. But I do think having that slight little bit of booziness in this beer suits it, actually, and it works with the Scottish malt. I think this is one of the things that you get in the more traditional shilling Scotch ale beers. you can feel the graininess of this malt actually. And in this kind of beer, it really shows you in a little bit more of a raw form, if that makes sense. And you know, the barrel aged side of this beer, I think, just adds another side to it as well. As I said in the ad infinitum, these beers really test your palate and get you thinking about what's actually going on in the brewing process and in the beer itself. So that's one of the reasons why I like these beers. So I definitely want to try the porter and see what that's all about, as well as the other ones that they've released. So yeah, on the I think on the but I think we've said everything we need to about the middle third of your palate, to be quite honest with you. So on the back third of your palate, then the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of that bready bit, that kind of bread crusty build up, and you get a wee bit of a how would you say, you do definitely get a little bit of a kind of more grainy aspect in there, but the back third of your palate is kind of the same. Underneath, you can feel the more grainy and dry and slightly spicy aspects of the woody character in there. On top of that, it almost reminds me of some of the cedar barrel aging that I had with Japanese sakes. So yeah, you do get a little bit of that more spicy, woody sort of thing. On top of that, you get some of the, you do get more of that. You don't get so much of the Jacob's cream cracker there actually, but you get the kind of quite pungent grainy bread crust. Then you get the brown bread sitting on top of that. Those two layers are a bit thicker, I would say. Then on top of all of that, you can feel the kind of more dense yeasty component to this beer. So you can feel that big dense doughy yeasty kind of character coming out of this one as well. So yeah, I do like how that goes together in this one. The yeasty character for me is kind of like a straight up sort of dry white bready note there. There's a little bit of a kind of peppery spice character to it almost. And it's, you know, it's quite a grainy brown bready kind of spice too. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer is quite interesting. And as I said, I would be very curious to know whether that is due to, you know, some of their house cultures and things that they have. So yeah, interesting stuff for sure. But let's look at the, you know, as I always say, pardon me, with these beers, the back third of your palate, the flavour is slightly taller when you get the yeasty notes, and as you come further forward, it just condenses down a wee bit, and the flavours are a little bit more squashed together. But on the hoppy side of things, it does get quite interesting. So in the back corners of the palate, there's definitely a wee bit of earthiness there, and the earthiness is a little bit more pungent than I've been used to with kind of German noble hops, if you like. So that's interesting. But as you come further forward, you can feel there is a little bit of a herbal character there, and then as you reach the front corners of the palate, you do have a little bit of that kind of slightly more spicy floral aromaticity, and that's kind of interesting. You can feel the German smoothness and brightness underneath, but you do get that American kind of boldness and punchiness, if you like, on top of it. But round the front curve of the palate, you've got some nice grassiness in there. It is like a wet, freshly cut grass, but you do get a wee bit of zestiness there, and that is the Centennial, absolutely. But let's focus on the front third of your palate and the kind of fruity aspect of the beer, just to round off. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a bready build up there. Then the base of that front third of your palate, you get a nice kind of smooth, woody character underneath that, and a little bit of brown bread, I would say. And then on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's examine the fruity notes. Yeah, so the fruitiness again is kind of what you'd expect. I mean, at the back of that front third of your palate, you can feel there's this nice, the thing that's interesting is the back half and the front half of the front third of your palate are both quite oily in a sense, but the back, the fruits are a wee bit drier, I would say. But yeah, for me, there's quite a dried, you know, melony note to this. You can really get that, but at the same time, it's dry. But then the further forward you come, it just, the melony notes kind of creep out a little bit more, and it gets more oily and kind of sweet in a sense. So yeah, I really like how this whole thing goes together actually from that perspective. The melony notes from the whole melon are very nice. But as you come further forward, you can really feel just towards the front tip of your tongue, you get a big bit of that kind of lemon, big zesty lemon character from the Centennial. But it's actually quite a dark lemon, if that makes sense. It's not the brightest of lemony flavours that I've come across before. There's something in my head as well that makes me want to say there's a wee touch of a kind of red fruity note to this beer too. But it's not quite as obvious in the flavour as it was in the aroma, to be honest with you. So yeah. But yeah, I think definitely there is a wee bit of a red fruity, a red kind of candied fruitiness to this beer the further that you go into the aftertaste with it. So it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard. You just get it, I think there's a wee bit of an oily candy fruitiness the further you go into the aftertaste with the beer. But again, this is very nice, and as I've said, I've been impressed with this. So I do want to try the other 5 beers that Epochal have out. I just need to see if I can get a hold of all 5 of them. That's the thing. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, to round off this review, because I'm impressed with this beer once again, and I like the slightly bigger booziness it has. Mouthfeel wise, I would say that this beer is probably mid-bodied. Carbonation is quite smooth. It does have a bit of crispness to it, as you would expect from a barrel-aged beer, and bottle fermentation, secondary fermentation, whatever you want to say. It does have that wee bit of crispness to it, but it also feels very clean. And as I've mentioned in many a Scottish review, Scottish water, we're very proud of our tap water here. But yeah, it gives you all of that. It's a nice, clean mouthfeel that you get from this one, but quite smooth in a number of ways, and a little bit crisp as well. So, in terms of IBUs, it's a bit difficult to say, to be honest with you, because like I said, some of the bitterness you get out of this beer, it's easy in this beer to conflate sort of grainy, spicy character with hoppy bitterness. And if it's dry hopping and that they're using in this, I think technically speaking it's got 0 IBUs, but the spiciness gives you the impression of something like 40, maybe 50 IBUs at a push. So technically speaking, I'm not sure what to say on that. And always remember that IBU counts are my weakest point of beer reviewing by quite a distance. But the malty barrel-aged yeasty side of this beer leans towards that kind of more spicy side of things. It does develop a bit of smoothness and a little bit of sweetness later on. And then the fruity side of the beer, I think, is quite oily, and it does give you a wee bit of dry fruity character as well. But overall, this is another very, very nice beer from Epochal. Impressed with this one. I think the slightly more boozy character of this suits the whole vibe of this type of beer a little bit more. So I'll need to try the others, as I said, and see how those have turned out too. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. This has been another really nice one. So big thumbs up to Epochal. These guys, I think they're going to be very interesting to watch over the next little while. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Epochal Brewery or Epochal Barrel Fermented Ales as well. And as I said, we will be returning to these guys fairly shortly. But thank you again for watching. Check my social media, check out theirs, and I'll catch you guys later on. This one is the Ethereal Substances at 6.8% ABV, a barrel fermented Scottish Pale Ale with Huell Melon and Centennial. Yeah, awesome stuff. So check it out. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and thank you for watching.